Welcome to SVG-TV News for Thursday, August 7th. I'm Jimmy Prince with the details. In the news tonight, leader of the opposition, Annem Eustace, has again expressed some concern over the size of the recently published voters list. According to the recently released document, the latest figures put the voters list at 105,919, up from just under 102,000 in 2010. This number presents a problem, Eustace told SVG-TV News. Eustace explains that he was informed by the Electoral Office that they wanted to reduce the list by ensuring that those with the new identification cards could vote. The leader of the opposition says that he was not aware of the status of this process. However, he contends that the number of those without the new ID cards was high.
For East Kingston, there are 4,818 people with the new ID card. Okay? But there are 3,500 without. In my constituency, I'm talking. So any steps and adjustment you have to make is a big thing. Okay? And nationally, there are 68,600 with the new card. And there are 37,002 without. So you see what that means? So we have to take that whole matter very seriously with respect to this election that's coming up. That's the situation as of now, 2014.
Meanwhile, Supervisor of Elections Sylvia Finlay-Scrub has responded, stating that the increase in the voters list was not surprising, considering the number of persons coming forward to register since the last general elections. Finlay-Scrub told SVG-TV News that she had engaged representatives of both major political parties in meetings to give them the opportunity to put forward their concerns. According to the Supervisor of Elections, both sides subsequently agreed that something ought to be done regarding the size of the list and also agreed on the measures to be implemented to do so.
As we stand, I am working along with the Ministry of Legal Affairs to see what would be the best way to ensure that the list is a valid one without infringing on anybody's rights as a voter.
Finlay-Scrub further states reasons for the increase in the voters list.
In the 3 years since that, a number of persons have turned 18. Persons have qualified on the basis of their residency in St. Vincent, whatever the reasons are. There were persons who were in the age range 30 to 40 and had never registered for an ID card. But as we are now aware, it is practically impossible to do business in this country without having a valid ID card. And so for a number of reasons, people register as voters, not necessarily as a voter, but because when you register, you get your ID card, which you need. So that the registration in the constituencies all year round has been quite high.
Persons who have migrated are proving problematic to the process of purging the voters list. Supervisor of Elections Sylvia Finlay-Scrub made a comment during the interview with SVG-TV News. She explains that it was difficult to remove such persons from the voters list without sufficient proof they are now residing outside of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
That the group of persons on the list that poses the problem are the persons who have migrated. And we all know we cannot just remove people's names from a voters list without evidence, because it's not a matter of saying the person is out of the country for 5 years. The person should be out of the country for 5 years and never returned in the 5 years. So the people who come for carnival every year but have been out of the country for 30 years, they are eligible voters.
In other news, leader of the Democratic Republican Party, DRP, sees nothing questionable or corrupt in the government's handling of the matter surrounding former High Court Registrar Tamara Marks Gibson. Anisha Batiste, in an interview with SVG-TV News, says she finds it extremely difficult to conclude official corruption by the government and the respective state agencies charged with investigating the circumstances which led to the forced resignation of the former registrar. The DRP leader says that though some might question the time being taken to investigate the matter, it is simply a case where certain procedures are being followed in addressing the issue.
We have to wait for investigation. If we had to wait on an auditor's report, if it's now up to the DPP and the police service to take action, I want to see what they would do. But since we had to wait on an auditor's report, how can I say that the government is corrupt in the way it has handled it? I'm trying to be fair here. We know that the lady did something wrong. That is public knowledge, and the very fact that she was asked to resign by the Attorney General, that is public knowledge. But did the leader of government go into her mind and tell her to do those things? Did the leader of government go into her mind and tell her to act the way she acted? No, come on. This is a reality. And I am saying what is most important, what I would be interested in doing and in judging at the end of the day when I've seen everything, I would be interested in teaching myself a lesson as a potential and future leader of government to ensure that should such a thing happen under my government, I would want to be very careful where I can as Prime Minister, because there are certain things I cannot just go and do. As Prime Minister, I would want to be very careful to ensure that it is handled as best as possible so that justice is done and seen to be done.
But he asserts that no government, political leader or Prime Minister can stop an individual or two from doing wrong under their watch.
It can happen under any government, the ones that a public servant or two may choose to do or not do. The point about it is how you address it, how you deal with it. I believe that it is important to ensure that you show that you're a government of accountability and transparency, and that you're not taking people for granted, you're not trying to beat around the bush and fool them or anything like that. That you show fairness in all your operations, regardless of who the person is. And I believe once you do that, then you are dealing with it properly. I cannot speak for the opposition, the parliamentary opposition, with respect to saying this particular thing or that particular thing represents corruption, because I know that some of the things they have criticized about, some of those things have happened under previous governments. All right, when you have a public servant here, they're doing something that is not right, and seemingly getting a slap on the wrist by perhaps being transferred from one department to the other. Those are legitimate concerns the intentions would have. But I cannot in every last case say, well, the Prime Minister or the head of the department is to be blamed or whatever the case is.
And with the Director of Audit's report regarding the former registrar completed and circulated just over a week ago to the relevant authorities, Leader of the Opposition, Annem Eustace, says he has very little confidence that there will be any meaningful outcome.
Whatever has happened, what evidence was already sealed, not accessible to anybody, even for the disbarment procedure. Whatever guns they are sealed. To get that, you have to make, I believe, an application to the High Court for some judicial review or some step like that, even to begin to know what is happening. So let's assume that she is disbarred. Everything is sealed, and she goes, what happens? Who's going to take the next step? The person who sealed the evidence. I don't have any confidence, that none whatsoever. I believe the whole thing is a cover-up. If she has done certain things, deal with her on those things. She will not have left here just like that. Deal with her on those things. When people see, well, the government is taking action with, but you see the evidence even for in terms of disbarment proceeding. So we'd have to look to see what we can do with that.
In other news now, with the Ebola virus wreaking havoc in West African countries, Leader of the Opposition New Democratic Party, Annem Eustace, is calling on the relevant authorities here to do all in their power to ensure that the necessary precautionary steps are in place in the event the virus makes it to this country.
The point is this: you got to have the information, make it available to the public. The authorities have to monitor information. If there are any steps to take, they need to take now, they must say so. But we have a tendency now to just deal with the politics of everything. So if a reporter brings up, as Jerry Georgian, brings up the Ebola and the published data showing what happened in the world and so on, it's not to deal with him, deal with the issue. The minister must come forward and say, well, this is the situation, this is how we see it developing in relation to our part of the world. women's rights. And these are the steps that we'd like you to take. Nobody can't follow that. So there's no certainty you'll have it. But you point to certain factors because of air travel and so on nowadays. And the fact that we have some schools here and so on where we have people from Africa actually going to school and traveling to and from, we have to take it more seriously.
Still ahead on the news tonight, Justice Gautel Tom elevated to the appeals court. More on this when you come back. Welcome back. We're still on the local scene. There is full support coming from the rest of the New Democratic Party for Sinclair Leacock in light of a comment he made during last Thursday's march and rally staged by the NDP against corruption here. During last week's rally at Heritage Square, Leacock stated that the NDP would no longer be cooperating with the Unity Labour Party-led administration until the next general elections. And the leader of the opposition, Annem Eustace, in an interview with SVG-TV News today, says that he is in full support of Leacock's comments as they reflect accurately the position of the NDP. However, without going into details, Mr. Eustace says that the NDP will soon be embarking on some planned events.
I do not wish to go into detail about the things that we are doing, but there are certain actions that we'll take, which we haven't taken before. Because we don't believe that most times when we ask questions, we get any meaningful answers. And we'll be taking some actions which I won't go into now. They'll become obvious to people later on. And they need some respect to be shown to the opposition when they ask us. I asked a few questions on the issue of the registrar, and the Prime Minister writes me a 26-page letter, which is really crap and nonsense. Sorry to you have to use that language, but that's what it is. You know, let's evade in the issue and bring up all sorts of red herrings, and we will do what we have to do. Our interest is informing the public on these matters and making sure people have a view that is not jaundiced.
Mr. Eustace further states that the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines have a right to explanations in relation to what he describes as, quote, cases of corruption, unquote, and how the government intends to deal with the matters.
It's very important. You can't have something as you know has happened in the case of the registrar. And the public don't know what it is she did. You're hearing all these things with banks and money and so forth. You're hearing about certificates. You hear about passports and so on. You hear about marriages and so on, and the collection of fees for those and so on. And there are laws governing those things, and we see some violation of those laws. So we'll keep that issue on the front burner. You know? And to the extent that people try to pretend it's not there, we're going to make sure it remains there. We have too many of these issues that come out of audit reports and various things where no action is really taken. And people get away with a lot here. People out to leave the country with impunity.
Justice Gautel Tom, one of this country's resident judges, has been elevated to the position of appeals judge of the Eastern Caribbean Court based in St. Lucia. To mark the occasion, a ceremony was held at the High Court in Kingstown yesterday. Paying tribute to Tom's accomplishment were Parnell Campbell, Bertram Comishong, Andrew Cummins, Stanley Stockey John, and Carlisle Duggan, all Queen's Counsel, and lawyer Nicole Sylvester, who spoke on behalf of the Otter Bar. Tom, who came to these shows several years ago, presided over the High Court criminal and the civil matters. A young Vincentian author, Storm Halbish, last evening launched his third book to the public. The latest publication is entitled My Caribbean Connection. The 16-year-old, who launched his first book in 2008, entitled My Homeland, says this new book is a compilation of 21 countries that touch the Caribbean Sea. Halbish says although he wanted to see a few more countries, he was unable to visit and write about the entire region.
My parents would be broke, and my mother and I probably would have gone insane. So in the beginning, we chose 21 countries that we felt truly represented the diversity of the Caribbean. Some of them I had already visited, but the majority I had to make plans to get there. Each time I visited a country, my mission was simple. It was to find and experience something that is unique to each place. So I did some research on the places, and I set out for my adventures. I thought about what persons would think of when they heard of the name of each place. For example, who has heard of the St. Lucia without the pitons? Who's heard of a Trinidad without steel pan or carnival? Who has heard of a Jamaica without jerk chicken or Usain Bolt? And I was really lucky to see him run at the Commonwealth Games in Scotland last week.
Halbish says by writing the book, he hopes to deliver a few messages, which include showing that each country is beautiful and special in different ways.
And that we should learn and understand as many cultures as possible. 2, that we are responsible for the protection of that beauty, and that we understand the need to conserve and protect the natural environment and the wonderful creatures that call these places home. 3, that age is only a number. I hope that this book will encourage young entrepreneurs in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and all over the world to develop their talents into businesses. I'm not stopping now, as I plan to launch a line of merchandise under the Storm Inc. brand. This book is packed with fun facts, special places, and my adventures. I absolutely love traveling, and I believe one of the best ways to learn is by experience.
Meanwhile, former Culture Minister Winnie Batista congratulated the youngster on his achievement and notes that it is what she will like to see coming from more young Vincentians.
There's so many people who are afraid to write. They don't know if there's a future in this. There is a future in writing. It is a big, huge market out there for that type of work, and especially for people knowing about the region. Because unfortunately, all they know about are the politicians and not the people.
As part of its public awareness plan, the National Telecommunications Regulatory Commission, the NTRC, is hosting a series of sessions at learning resource centers across the country. ICT officer at the NTRC, Marcellus Constance, says under the Internet project, Internet access is readily available at various learning resource centers. He adds that the public awareness campaign is to ensure that persons fully understand the functions of the NTRC and the Universal Service Fund.
I, as the ICT officer, we speak about cybersecurity issues, right? So we'll be here from 9 to 3 in the afternoon, and we normally would speak to members of the public, show them about the use of the computers and about the internet, and we also would have members from the adult and continuing education with us assisting us in terms of the use of the computers here.
Constance notes that the training will be an ongoing activity and they'll also be hosting a series of community discussions.
We go in the evenings and have discussions about basically the same thing that we'll be doing here today, but it will just be in the evening time, and we'll have questions and so on. We will speak about the NTRC and the dispute resolution processes when persons have issues with the providers, the process on how they could go and have a dispute resolved. So that's basically what we'll be doing here today.